we'll move into our third segment, overreaction, underreaction. What's trending. You got an email. I'll let you, start that off. What did that email suggest?
Yeah, so I mean, this is honestly something I heard before this season, after they signed McCaffrey to an extension. But there's I think there's a corner of Panthers fandom that would like to see Christian McCaffrey traded for a draft pick or traded for some other commodity, maybe a quarterback. I don't know what the market is for Christian McCaffrey. I guess it would be okay, but this injury stuff hasn't helped. But do you think that's an overreaction or an underreaction?
I think that's a little bit of an overreaction. I could understand, the angst and him being hurt all this year and wondering what that means for his future. But it's only been 1 year. He had been healthy prior to that. And they did sign him to this huge contract. It's a lot of money. And maybe I don't know what you would do if you had to do that situation over again. Do you just let him walk? Do you let your best player walk? Somebody you invested in walk? I don't think you do. I do think it's a little bit of an overreaction, and I don't think you're going to get a high draft pick for Christian McCaffrey at what he cost either, knowing that he had the injuries that he had this year. I think it would depends when you even be able to find what they would be looking for him.
Yeah, I agree. I think there will be a time. I don't think you can say the Christian McCaffrey contract was a bad decision yet, just because like the Panthers also view him as a wide receiver kind of in a way. Like he's not just a running back in their eyes. I think there will come a couple years, there will be a time to like really be like, was that the wrong decision? Yeah. But after not missing a game due to injury in the first 3 years of his career, I just think it's too early just because one injured season to say like, oh, he's got to get out of here or anything like that.
Yeah. I think paying Christian McCaffrey at 24 is different than paying Jonathan Stewart at 28, 29 or something like that, or trying to pay or D'Angelo Williams at 30 or whatever. I mean, it's his first contract. He's your best player. You invested so much in him. I think they did what they had to do. Anyway, second one, Teddy Bridgewater, overreaction, underreaction. Teddy Bridgewater is not the franchise quarterback of the Panthers. Is not the answer for a franchise quarterback of the Panthers. I now seeing 15 games, I say that is not an overreaction. What do you think?
Yeah. No, it's not an overreaction at all, certainly. No, I don't think this was, I think the thing coming into the season was Teddy Bridgewater, like kind of how I viewed it was Teddy Bridgewater going to do enough to prove like that he's the guy, or was he going to be, I mean, he's been kind of average in his career, right? Like this isn't like shocking. Like this is kind of the quarterback Teddy Bridgewater is. I mean, do you say, oh, you could point to the offensive line, like an inconsistencies at left tackle, not having Christian. Like how do you calculate those? I mean, Teddy Bridgewater on his own is not enough. And I think that's why he's not a franchise quarterback. But you also kind of go into the offseason like he's fine, right? Like he's not like losing them games, really. I mean, I guess that Green Bay game point to, but he's not really losing them games. He's just not really winning them games either. So no, I don't think it's an overreaction, but I think it's kind of like what should have been expected from Teddy Bridgewater. Like, I don't think, to me, this season's not a surprise. This is kind of what we thought he was, which is why they didn't sign him to like that third year is very like they can get rid of him very easily. You know, it could be a 2-year thing. So
I think that's an important point, and it does irk me a little bit when I see people nitpick every tiny little thing mistake he makes without putting things into proper context, and it reminds me of how people treat Cam Newton on his way out, and did the same thing, nitpicked every little single thing. And I think that it is important to note that Teddy Bridgewater hasn't had his left tackle all season.
And his star running,
his star running back.
McCaffrey is a fact. Like, I don't think you can say, oh, it's everything, but it is like this offense we saw it in that Kansas City game. This offense would have been different with Christian McCaffrey all season.
Yeah. And I think the expectations were sky high. Like I don't know what people wanted. Just like you just said, I don't know what people wanted from Teddy Bridgewater. Like he hadn't done anything in his career. When I say that, I don't mean he hasn't done anything, but he hasn't done anything to warrant you to expect him to throw 40-yard bombs downfield and go carry a team on his back. He hadn't done that, and he had been known as somebody who did what he needed to do to win games, not put the team on his back and run with it. So I think people put those expectations on him, and when he didn't fill those expectations, they nitpick every little single thing, and I don't think that is exactly fair to Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think it's a long-term answer, but that's okay. The Panthers signed him to a 3-year deal to figure out if he was a long-term answer, and to serve that bridge in that gap. So, yeah, no pun intended. But I think the Panthers are getting what they expected of him.
Yeah,
they probably hoped that he would do a little bit more, but I think they're getting what they expected.
I think this is the last point on this, that like when you're evaluating Teddy, that I think everyone and like we need to keep in mind, like fans need to keep in mind. We've talked about this off the podcast, but like Joe Brady, like there's been some weird play calling and like some of this, the offense. Joe Brady runs the offense, and he, Teddy Bridgewater does it on the field, but like the offensive coordinator, I think, and Matt Rule, for that matter, also should share some responsibility. Teddy's the one on the field, so like he'll get the blame. But like, why did they call a quarterback sneak on 1st and goal, like during that Packers game? Like, I think there's a combination. Teddy for sure is responsible for his play, but I think the play caller and the people who run the offense off the field should also share in some of that responsibility.
Yeah, it's important to put things in context. And I think you should definitely want the best in your quarterback. You should definitely, expect high. I think you should have high expectations and want the best for your team, but you can't nitpick every little single thing without putting things in the proper context is what I think.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And last, I think, we talked a little bit about it in the first segment, but winning Sunday's game was a terrible mistake for the Panthers because it dropped them out of contention for 3rd place. I think that is a little bit of a overreaction because I do think that there is some importance in learning how to win these games at the end. And because, like we mentioned, the Panthers have so many needs that they can address with a potential number 9 pick or even later down the line.
Yeah. I mean, I just think too, like, I agree completely with what you said. I also think it's an overreaction. I think the way people are reacting is a big overreaction. Yeah. But I just think too, like, you look at a team, like, for example, let's look at the Giants, right? They're pretty happy with their quarterback kind of overall, Daniel Jones, who they drafted high in the 1st round. They had a good draft pick, or they picked him very high in the 1st round. That team is still like pieces away. Like they're still really reconstructing. And so like, I think it's easy to be like, oh, but if we drafted a quarterback, it would solve X, Y, and Z. But I just think, like you said, there's so many needs, and it's not necessarily like a problem solver. Like, and you don't want to draft, say the Panthers pick were 4, who knows, like maybe they don't like the top couple quarterbacks, and then they end up reaching for a guy who should have been picked later. Like, I just think overreacting to that before the season's even over and like the draft pick is secure is just, we say this every podcast, but like, just calm down.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just don't, it's not worth going through they won the game, and Matt Rule was always going to go into that game trying to win. So it is what it is.
Sam Darnold wasn't the entire answer for the New York Jets. I think that the Chargers have something special in Justin Herbert, but
they're still pieces away, right?
They're a long way away from. I don't want to say a long way, but they're not close, to being a Super Bowl contender. So
I mean, it's nice to know that, like, right? It's nice for the Chargers to be like, "Hey, we have our guy," but then it's like, "Okay, what's next?" So it's still like, it doesn't matter the order. You probably want your rookie quarterbacks are cheap. They're on those cheap deals. You want the team ready for when he's ready to play. So that's a factor.
Exactly. That's a perfect point right there. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys next week. So that's our show. If you like this podcast and want to see more projects like this, please subscribe to the Charlotte Observer's Sports Pass, where you get unlimited digital access to our sports section with our current deal for 99 cents for each of the first 3 months of your subscription.
That includes coverage of the Panthers, the Hornets, NASCAR, UNC Charlotte, high school sports, UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, NC State, and more. You can find the Sports Pass at charlotteobserver.com/sportspass.